My name is David Brown. I'm doing a new video for a dinosaur unboxing. Here's the box. Not going to show the label, but you can get the idea. This is something I had ordered online. They were mostly things I was familiar with, but there was some material I would really need to get a better look at. And for the unboxing, I'm just using a screwdriver. Yes, nothing here is going to be delicate, or it shouldn't be. I've already gotten through the ends of this. You might have gotten just a glimpse of the label there. You probably won't see it. Yes. Now, this will be really related to stuff I've previously covered in other videos, especially Mark's dinosaurs and what are called Brachiosaurs. And one of the things that's come up is how many things really are Brachiosaurs. Now I see now that they're in different bags or bits of packaging. They look taped up, not like someone had actually used a shrink wrap machine. And the screwdriver might still be as good as anything. And the main thing of interest with this whole order is that it had what looked like it could be a vintage copy of a dinosaur I've called the Abomination, or Hideous Abomination. I might be banging it up a bit, getting it out. They deserve it. Usually they're big and durable enough for some rough handling, and I might need to get another dinosaur or two out. Here's another one I'd been interested in. It's a Carnotaurus, and probably a pretty early one. It's the first example I've seen that shows the tripod stance, or what I'd call a staircase stance. You can see it looks kind of goofy, though it actually isn't too far off from what the real thing was like. And I'm going to need to take a closer look to get an idea when that might have been made. Now, here's one more thing. It's a Sauropod, obviously. Pretty stylized. I would wonder if it might be an older dinosaur. It's hard to say. It looks almost like a crayon. It feels more solid than it might look, though. And here is the big one. This is a new copy of the Abomination, and I already had a few handy here. Now this could get interesting. I'm trying to work out if these are really even the same size. This might be bigger. It's a little hard to gauge. Definitely feels a little bit heavier. So I could definitely believe this guy is maybe 70s or 80s, probably not more recent than the 90s. And I think if there's going to be a difference that's visible, it's from head on. Now, what I've shown before is just that these were a very weird bootleg of a Mark's Tyrannosaurus from either late 50s or very early 1960s. That was built with one leg raised for what they tried to make a dynamic pose. Instead, they gave it 1 foot that looks like a frog, 1 foot that looks like a sloth. And here's a view from the bottom. Now, this is a little bit different. The sideways sloth foot, here you can actually see a protrusion that might have stabilized it a bit. Either it's protruding or it's just flat. Maybe you won't see it as much on the camera. And with the foot, something I'm seeing here that might or might not show up. Here I think you can just see it. There's scales or bumps on the toes of the feet, which I hadn't noticed in others. Yes, this guy, they're definitely smooth. There could be a few different reasons for that. And the head looks not quite as bad. It's still got the weird ears, but it isn't as narrow, and it doesn't have the weird eyebrows these guys do. From this side especially, you could almost, if you looked at just the head, mistake it for a Mark's dinosaur, but then if you're looking at the whole body, you'll easily see that this is a bootleg. And another thing I'm noticing here that hadn't stood out to me before, it has the mold marks. They're actually a little bit raised here and here. I can see similar marks here. You'd really expect them, especially here on this guy. And here they aren't raised, they're indented. So overall, it definitely is a better version of this dinosaur. You can see where they were trying to do a good job, but the very obvious flaws are still there, especially with this foot, the frog foot. And it's still not something that could actually survive and eat or even stand up for any length of time. As I'd ranted talking about this guy before, it might have kind of been excusable in the 70s, but there's no rational reason to have had this in production nearly as long as it's been. And again, with the newer ones, you can see it going downhill. Even this guy and this one, you can see this one was clearly made more cheaply and maybe from another generation of copies of the mold. Now, I've got more dinosaurs here. This one is very definitely a copy of a Mark's Stegosaurus. He got broken, and it is definitely not an original. It's smaller than the ones I have, maybe even smaller than some of the knockoffs I've had before, but it's not too bad as a copy, and it's got a pretty good color here with the blue. And this might be a copy of a Mark's Brontosaurus, but much smaller. Here it is with the abomination for comparison. And I'm definitely satisfied that this guy here is not closely related. There might be a hint of a Mark's resemblance with the head, but nothing beyond that. And it does look a bit stylized in itself. There's some bumpiness. And this has to be what they'll copy what they usually call the Mark's Allosaurus. Usually it will be called an Allosaurus, but you might see it called other things. And again, very small. And I'm not sure if there's any more here. This is already going a bit long. And these are looking a lot better. So I'll see what we get here. Try not to do any more damage with the screwdriver. And I've got bits of loose plastic already. I'm just tearing through here. And I have some further things emerging. My big thing is that I'm planning a trip to a very major museum. How much will be on my blog or YouTube or other things remains to be seen. Now, this is the first guy that came out. By my standards, this is very, very nice. Of course, this is by my standards, which starts at the Brachiosaurs as about average. Now, the obvious problem, it has a or rather doesn't have the spikes for the thagomizer. Everything else is good. It's got the alternating plates rather than only one or two rows, though that was one thing they were already doing right in the Mark's Stegosaurus. Here you can see them both from the top. And I think we have a big mouth here. Now this is pretty silly. But for this kind of thing, again, it's not saying much, but by my standards, it's not bad. The mouth is goofy. But otherwise, it's about right for the shape. Apart from the teeth, certainly. And you do see where there's the hollow space for what I call a big mouth, but it's not a huge opening either. And there's some interesting sculpting here. It's got rows of bumps for scales that are pretty close to what we've found on the real thing. There's a bit of the tail missing. I have not seen any bits mixed in, broken bits that is mixed in, so I think everything that's missing here so far at least was already missing when it was shipped. Here's another sauropod. Now this one is very odd. I'd have to do more research. My first thought was wondering if it was the same maker as this, but they're very different material. This is more rubbery. This is a quite hard plastic, and this is a lot less realistic. The neck, they actually managed to make a little bit too long. The tail's too short. And the legs are kind of odd. Now, on this one, they aren't great either. but it's stylized enough you don't necessarily see where the legs would end on the body. Here, you can actually see the outline like a drumstick of the legs, and that is just not right. And there should be a few more. Now, these, I think, are ones, some at least, that I already had. Yes, this I definitely had before, or something that might have either been copied from it or that it was copied from. It's a Carnotaurus. I've seen the things very much like this as arcade prizes, and they're pretty good quality. This, it's I don't think a direct copy, but it's very similar to one of the dinosaurs that was made by the company called Dino, mostly as erasers. This I don't think is an eraser, but he is a pretty soft rubber. And this is another one that I think could be an arcade prize dinosaur. It's a Brachiosaur with the nose above, or nostrils above the eyes, which from what we know now is like reconstructing a human with no nose at all. But then we don't have a way to know what was there, just that there was something we don't have in the fossils. And the last thing is a Stegosaurus. This is one more I would wonder if it's based on a Dino dinosaur eraser. He's got some kind of discoloration. I don't think it's actual mold. It's green on this side, solid orange on the other. Not a lot to say. Even here, you can kind of see they've got the alternating plates rather than either one row or two. So that seems to cover the whole box. Whether it was worth what I paid for it could be up in the air, but it's definitely some interesting material. I'd have to research more to get an idea where these came from, especially this guy. He is the kind of thing that looks like you'd find anywhere, but I would say is actually quite unusual, especially how limited the detail is. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. It's already gone on longer than I planned, and I'll be seeing just what kind of material I get, what kind of adventures I get into in the next few weeks, and I'll definitely be back.